Hey guys, Tap here with Real Michigan Anglers, and today we're going to talk about choosing beads for steelhead. We're going to talk about choosing the right colors and the right sizes and how to get started for beginners, because it can be pretty overwhelming at first trying to get started with bead fishing and knowing what size you need, what color you need, what conditions you might need them for, those kinds of things. So stay tuned, we're about to cover all that sort of stuff. So, if you're new to bead fishing and you don't know what to buy, here's the easiest way to get started. So I'm going to give you the easy answer and the complex answer. The easy answer is you need some sort of a pink bead, you need some sort of a chartreuse bead, and you need some sort of an orange bead. In this case, these are bloop beads, and these are some colors that I like that fall within the pink, chartreuse, and orange category. So those are like our three main food groups. Bloop beads are pretty premium. We're looking at Son of Salmon here, Bloopsy Daisy, which is my favorite chartreuse bead of all time, and Apricot Drop, which is actually my favorite orange bead of all time. That's your three food groups. If you get those, you're going to want those in a couple sizes. You want the sizes appropriate for your rivers that you're going to be fishing, and we're going to talk more about that in a bit. But first, if you're wanting to do this on a budget, I have some alternatives here. These are 99 cents a package, just good old beads from the craft store, okay? So you can get into bead fishing really cheap by just picking up some cheap craft beads and getting a variety of colors so that you have options when you go out on the river, okay? And you can get into 3 packs of beads. I'm going to recommend 6 packs to start minimum, so that you have at least 2 sizes and 3 colors, okay? So say you go the craft store route and you get these 3 bags, and you get these 3 bags in another size, 6 bags at 99 cents. You're $6 deep so far. That's not bad. Your only other expenses are going to be your hooks and your bead pegs and your line. That's your good cheap option to get started. Otherwise, you can go with any brand that you want. You can see I've got some Mr. Dirks represented here. I've got my Slaying Steel sticker over here. I'm obviously a big fan of bloop beads. Another brand of bead that I like are these UV2 fusions. These are probably the cheapest good quality bead on the market, in my opinion. These are almost half price of the average bead. That's what I would consider a premium bead. And there's a lot of subpar beads out there on the market that get sold in kits that are real basic plain colors that will work but maybe aren't as good as some of these more premium beads like the ones I've just mentioned. You also can look into trout beads or Great Lakes beads. Those are all good options. A lot of people make their own from craft beads and paint their own. I like to leave it up to the pros, and there's reasons for that. A good example, this is called Fireball Orange. This is an absolute slayer on low light, dirty water conditions. This is a super bright bead. It's UV. There's extra visibility that's going to happen when you're using this bead compared to your 99-cent bead from the craft store. Okay? So, some of these types of things, as well as some of the glow beads that you can get from various companies. Here's a bloop bead that glows. You can charge that up with your UV flashlight and fish with those at night or in low light conditions. This would be a great second option for your pink department. Okay, so let's get back to that concept before we get too crazy with all the different variations of glow beads and things like that. So, if you've got your 3 and you want to expand out more from there, the complicated answer to choosing the right bead color is you're mimicking the eggs that are in the river at that time, A king salmon egg often looks a lot like this. Somewhere between that and like a brighter reddish type color. But somewhere between there and like something kind of more like that. Okay. That's a more natural, not really this one, but this is like a more natural egg look for king salmon and coho eggs. Something a little more on the red side, or even a little more on the opaque side, like these guys here. So this is kind of orange, but pretty translucent. And when I see eggs drop out of fish on the river, like if you catch a hen and lift it up, a lot of times she'll start spitting eggs. That's a good way to figure out what the color is to key in on. A lot of times those eggs end up looking like this. Okay. Sometimes you get something more pink looking. Okay, well I don't know where I put those, but more natural pinks, kind of like these, or I've got these here. Let me pull these down. These are some soft plastic beads. These are some pretty realistic colors, like this redder color here, versus like this pinker color here. This is a little more peachy. This is a little more natural, translucent orange. Anything that looks like that kind of color is a pretty natural salmon egg imitation. Okay, and that's where our two main food groups come from, the orange and the pink. The third being chartreuse. Now, chartreuse works well because chartreuse is the color of brown trout eggs. So a brown trout egg that comes out of a brown trout looks somewhere between that and a more yellow color, maybe like this here. This is Sweet Chin Music. These are the generic. The Bloopsie Daisy has the white highlights in it, which really mimics an egg that's been in the river. So like I said, there's an easy answer and a more complex answer. So once we have our main colors that eggs come out in, we have to consider the amount of time that the egg spends in the river and how that affects the coloration of the egg. So maybe the egg comes out looking like this and fades to a more opaque yellow, or maybe it turns white as it disintegrates. So these mimic eggs that have been in the river slightly longer. Okay, and then that's where you get into things like this, the tallywhacker, that's my bead, or the butter. Butter is more of a dirty water kind of a bead in my opinion. This really pops when the water's dirty or the visibility is low. I like to say the same thing about this, but not quite in the same way, although the orange flash does make it a little more eye-catching. And as opposed to a straight chartreuse, this is like a chartreuse and white swirl with the orange dots on it. Okay, so now we've got a couple different variations of chartreuse here. And those represent what the egg may look like depending on how long it's been in the river. So how long can an egg be in the river? It could be a matter of seconds if it gets gobbled up right away. A matter of minutes is a little more likely. It could be in there for a few hours floating down. An egg could sit and partially germinate, and then current conditions could pop that egg out of its little safe place and it drifts down. So you could have an egg with a little partially formed fish on it in the spring. So fly guys tend to throw those little streamers with egg sacs on them. That represents a almost hatched fish that just got washed out of its little gravel bed. So there's all sorts of possibilities there, and we could go extremely in depth with all of that, and I don't want to get that crazy here. But you want variations and fades of those colors. Say you got your three main colors. What I would focus on after that is adding anything with white highlights, okay? So this one's already got the white highlights, and as does this one, the apricot drop. This is why this is one of my favorite orange colors, because it's translucent and really closely emulates the color of a natural egg, plus It's got that little bit of yellow paint to it on the one side and the white highlights. So to me this looks like a somewhat fresh but not totally fresh egg that's drifting downstream, and the coloration's just right spot on for that. If you're fishing dirty water, lower visibility, these brighter eggs, like these fireball eggs, are going to be awesome. The new Bloop John Scaly, which I have somewhere but I don't have in front of me. Yeah, the new John Scaly bead. So this one looks like a bit of a hybrid between the chartreuse and the orange, and really the chartreuse highlights really just help this pop and be more visible in low water situations. So that would be a really good bead option for low light conditions. Average conditions call for just an average typical looking bead. Low light conditions call for a brighter bead with a little more going on. And ultra clear conditions call for really supernatural looking beads. So here's an example of another good dirty water low light bead. This is essentially orange. There's a little bit of pink in there. The bead itself is kind of a translucent creamy color, and it's painted with these chartreuse highlights and the orange dots. This catches a fish eye in any medium clarity to like dirty water clarity. This is a really good bead. This is the mason jar from Bloop. This is the one my buddy Jason designed. So let's talk about clear water variations. That's where I like stuff like this that's a little more subtle. This one has some highlights to it, a little bit of white, a little bit of yellow speckle, but it's mostly translucent yellowy chartreuse. That's a natural looking brown trout egg. Here's another natural looking color that would be good for clear water conditions. So you got clear water, sun's out. This looks very much like a natural orange egg. Pretty translucent, partially yellow, partially orange. That's the Sauce by Bloop. That would be a good one for a more natural presentation on days where visibility is good. I actually don't have a ton of translucent natural pinks. That's something I need to get more of. I think I have some maybe in my box here. Let's see if I can find an example. Okay, here's two examples of some subtler pink colors that are a little more on the natural side but still a bit flashy. This is the Introvert by Bloop. This is a pretty natural faded pink color, so this represents an egg that's been in the water longer. Just a little bit of chartreuse highlight just to add some eye-catching qualities to it. And then here we have the Ghost Face Killer by Bloop. This is a pretty natural kind of pink color, a little bit of white for highlight accent, makes it look a little more faded, and then an even more natural looking color here. This is almost falls into the orange category, but still a little more in the pink category on this side. And that's the kind of pink that would be a little more natural, so this would be a good one for reasonable clarity. Also, this is a glow bead, so if you hit this with your UV light, this is an awesome bead for night fishing. I actually caught the vast majority of my king salmon this year on the 14 mil version of this bead. So let's talk about sizes. We've talked quite a bit about colors at this point. Size has to do with a lot of factors, but again, there's a complex answer and an easy answer. So let's talk about the easy answer. The easy answer is if you're fishing creeks, tiny little creeks, that's where your 6 mils are good. Okay, so that's a 6 mil bead. Very small bead. And actually, here's all 3 of the colors you need in a 6 mil bead. These are Mr. Dirks glass beads in 6 mil. So this is something I use as like an alternative to a split shot on the line when I want my bait to get down a little lower, I like to use these with like a spawn bag. I've used these with skein, or you can just use them by themselves for tiny little water, super clear, high visibility. That's when you're going to use these tiny little guys. So a lot of times, something like that's going to go unnoticed in the vast river. So as you get into fishing bigger rivers, you're going to need bigger beads. So there's a 6. This would be an 8. A nice natural pink color, 8. That's a good looking bead there for a natural pink. Here's a 10. A little bigger. This is kind of a very natural translucent orange color. Okay, and you can see the size differences as I set those all down there. After that we get a size 12. There's that mason jar bead again. This is a size 14. Loopsy daisy. And here's a size 16. I've never gone bigger than 16, but 16 is generally good for king salmon. Cohos I actually do better with a 14 or a 12, or even a 10. So the type of fish you're targeting can dictate the size bead you use, or the size river. So your 6mm beads are for the tiny creeks to mid-sized creeks in super clear conditions when visibility is high. Your 8mm is also for smaller water like creeks and high visibility. Your 10mm might work in those smaller creeks when the visibility is low, or it might work in small rivers when the visibility is high. The 12mm is what I use the most on my mid-size to big-size rivers. On a really big river, I might go with a brighter 12mm. On a smaller river, I might go with a slightly more subtle 12mm. For high water, low visibility, or really large rivers, we've got the 14s and the 16mm for super low visibility, very large rivers, when you really need to catch the fish's eye from a little bit further away. Those larger beads come in handy. But yeah, that's more of a king salmon size bead here. These are more steelhead size beads here. These are kind of more trout size beads here, but I have caught steelhead on these itty bitty guys. So all size works. It really just depends on the size of the water and or the water clarity, and realistically it's a combination of the two, and that's why there's no really one right answer. If you don't want to buy the 3 colors in every size, I would just analyze what kind of rivers are you going to most likely fish. Are you fishing the Grand River a lot, or the Manistee River a lot? These are bigger rivers. Then your 12s are going to be more ideal for those rivers, and maybe even your 14s for dirty water situations. If you're fishing some of the smaller creeks and tributaries, that's where the 10s and 8s are nices, and the really small creeks, the 6s. So for typical Great Lakes rivers that have steelhead fishing, I would say you mostly need 10s and 12s. So if you're just getting started, you don't know what to buy, get yourself some 10mm beads in pink, orange, and chartreuse, and some 12mm beads in pink, orange, and chartreuse. Okay, that'll get you started. So now let's get crazy and talk about all of the possible colors that you might need. And I guess I say all, but I shouldn't say that because I don't have all of the colors that you could need or want. But I've got quite a few. So we've got some fancy things. This guy here, not the most natural looking thing by any means. Neither is that guy. So we got the repo bait and the Houdini here. You get stuff like this, where this is kind of both a chartreuse egg imitation and an orange egg imitation, but definitely a faded one with the white highlights. Another one that's not super natural looking at all is the leakers. But again, this is a really bright color that's going to show up very easily, and fish aren't going to miss that. That's perfect for dirty water or low light conditions. As is butter. You also get other cool hybrid colors like the Rovacane, where it's essentially a very translucent natural orange but with pink highlights. That's a real good looking bead. Even more oddball-ish colors. Some things that don't hurt to have around that you don't necessarily need and probably won't use a lot, but blue, purple, and black. There's reasons for that. They actually do work. Like I said, that's not the typical thing that you're going to do all the time, but in some situations that can really work. Other not so natural looking colors that are just bright for low light situations. Okay, we've got some purples here, some light blue, another nice dirty water color there, kind of a reddish orange with white. So I hope that really helps you get a better idea of where to get started with beads, or maybe how to choose colors, so that when you go on the river you're not just like throwing black because some guy on YouTube said black beads are a good color to have. Well, yeah, they are a good color to have, but that's not going to be your best option in most situations. So that's what I'm hoping to clarify here, as well as just kind of get you started in the right direction as far as knowing what to use. So another thing that I recommend that's a good thing for beginner bead fishermen to do is to change colors often and or run a double bead rig when it makes sense. So don't run a double bead rig when you're in a tiny creek. You're just going to get hung up a whole bunch. If it's a super log jammy area, that might not be a good idea. But if you're out there and you don't know what color to bead to choose, and you forgot all of the advice that I just gave you, and you want to just get something in the water and hope you catch something, do a double bead rig and run things that are totally different. So a really natural orange with a really bright chartreuse. If neither of those are getting hit, switch to two other totally different colors, okay? If you get hit on pink, but you didn't get hit on any of these other ones, try other pinkish things, like this has some pink in it, or maybe this pink will work just as good, or maybe even better, or maybe they want that pink, So as you get bites, hone in on which bead's getting bit. When you're using a double bead rig and you hook into a fish and don't land it, whichever bead is slid down is the one that got bit. So whichever bead gets bit, that's the color you're honing in on, and you start going. So if I get bit on, say, this guy, is it a chartreuse bite or an orange bite? Which is it? Or is it that creamy naturalness? So I would probably try that one if this one works. And to check to see if it's more the chartreuse, I would try that one. So this one led me to either this one or this one. Say I throw both of these, this one didn't work and this one did, well, they're honed in on the chartreuse and not the orange. And if you're fishing in one spot or one general area throughout the day, you can use all of that information as you hook fish to help you hone in on the best color for that day. There are definitely times where I catch a fish right away on a color and just keep fishing it all day. And in some cases, it might have been a better option for me to play around with colors more or sizes more and see if that actually increases or decreases the number of bites. So another thing you can do, say you get hit on this guy, you can try that same bead in a size bigger or a size smaller, and you might find that that makes a big difference. So as you're out there fishing, keep changing your rig up, keep trying different size beads, different color beads to really hone in and figure out what's working. Okay, here's another really helpful thing that you can do so that you can change colors more frequently. I love this Pips Leader Caddy. This is a Pretied Leader Box. Okay, so if I pull this out, there it is. My leader's already tied up, ready to go. At this point, all I have to do is slide a bead on and peg it somewhere near the hook. 1 to 4 inches from that hook is usually what's recommended. So you can do that. Say you've already got some rigged up, or you like I've just got, look, I've got leaders laying around all over the place over here. That's not the one I want. That's a jig. Here's a couple beads that I previously had rigged up that I can reuse. This one's a double bead rig. I'll leave that where it is. Here's a bead rig. So what I can do is I can even rig up all the beads with, or all of my leaders with beads on them. Put that in here. Get that hook stuck in there. Slide my bead up so that it fits in there better. I'm just putting the line through the slot there and twisting until it sucks in all that line. Okay, see now all the line's in there, and there my bead is. You can pre-rig that with one of every color in every size that you have and walk out on the river ready to go. You trim it to the proper length that you need, tie it on, and use it. That'll save you time on the river and help you be able to throw more colors without spending a horrible amount of time re-rigging on the river and wasting time. That's as far as I'm going to go with this video today. I already talked more than I wanted to. Hopefully that's a lot of good information for you though. And stay tuned because I'm going to talk about more things related to this, like how to peg the beads, what kind of pegs I like to use, some other tips and tricks, how to rig for float fishing. I've got some videos with some stuff about that, but I'm going to go more in depth. So stay tuned for that. Make sure to like the video, leave me a comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. Catch you guys later. Thanks.